Hello everyone, this is Xinyue Yao, and I'm from China. Today I'm going to show my global project, and my topic is water crisis. Let's move to the first part of my project. The first part is background. With rapidly increasing number of the population and improvement of the per capita income, they gradually show the shortage situation of the fresh water resource at a range of the globe. The 47th United Nations General Assembly designated March 22nd as World Water Day and celebrated every year, which appeal to the people who is from all over the world enhance the vigilance to the current ubiquitous shortage of the fresh water resource. According to the Human Development Report of the United Nations Development Programme, the consumption of the global freshwater resource increased 6 to 7 times than before from the beginning of the 20th century, and the increasing speed is twice faster than the increased speed of the population around the world. Currently, there are more than 1.4 billion people who lack enough safety and clean drinking water resource, which means there is one person who does not have the basic survival drinking water among the 9 persons. According to the prediction of the relative experts, there would be 2.3 billion people who do not have enough drinking water resource all over the world in the future. According to the documents of the United Nations Commission on Sustainable Development, the waste of the freshwater resource, especially the waste of the freshwater resource in agricultural usage aspect, obviously consumes the amount of the global freshwater resource. Although the consumption of the agricultural water use is about 70% of the amount of the global freshwater resource, the agricultural irrigation has low water use efficiency. In fact, there is more than 60% of the water has been leaked or evaporated in the transportation process before used for irrigation, which will cause land salinization. On the other hand, the freshwater source is kind of a renewable nature source, which depends on the water situation of the earth. With the development of the industry, the majority of the water resource has been polluted. To getting enough water source, some countries contribute the dams as upper ridge of the river and change the flow direction of the river, which has a negative impact on the water circulation and water purify ability. The next part is development trade of the global water resource. In 2002, the United Nations Environment Programme published Global Environment Outlook, which pointed out currently there are more than half of the rivers has been polluted seriously or the large-scale flow capacity decreased. There are 80 countries, there are about the 40% of the world that seriously lack water resource. If we cannot hold back this situation during 50 years, there are more than 55% of the global people will face with water scarcity. In 2002, all of the representatives of the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development agreed with the list the water crisis as the most important challenge in the future. According to the Human Development Report of the United Nations Development Programme, Under the Promoting the International Conference and the United Nations Relative Organization, every country of the world makes a huge progress of the water resource issue. Those countries hold the adjustment activities of the water resource at range of the worldwide and do some significant research and investigation about water source management. In the water resource layout plan, the competitive water usage becomes a hot point in the research process, which leads to the investment competition and makes the unreasonable allocation contradiction of the water source in the different district, departments, and countries. From 1980s, the serious water environment pollution has threatened the human health and become the hot point in the research process among the different countries. Many countries build the principles of the surface water quality and groundwater quality and the model of the different kinds of river, lake, and reservoir, which will benefit to form the uniform data between the amount of the water and water quality. And it builds the intact and integrative database of the water resource management. At the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in 1992, the sustainable development ideas had slowly filtered into people's minds, which contribute to the development of the water resource research. Many countries keep the sustainable development ideas and recognize the new relationship between the water resource protection and economic development, and the relationship between the water resource management and the relative law support. All of those changes of the attitude of people is typical example of the transition of the people's water source conceptions. The next part is the potential problem of the global water resource. Currently, there are several countries that are facing the shortage of the freshwater resource. According to the prediction of the relative experts, there are an increasing number of the countries will facing the same problem in the future. To solve the water crisis, some countries take the effective measures to deal with those problems. Even some countries fight against each other and to get enough freshwater resource. For example, Egypt and Ethiopia, India and Bangladesh, which always conflict for the benefit of the freshwater resource. Besides, the location of the Turkeys between the Euphrates River and the Tigris River. When the war happened with Iraq, Turkey will cut off the river flow any time to get the victory of the war. So the two rivers is the main reason that can cause the conflict and the contradiction between the countries. Also, Saudi Arabia is famous for the world's petroleum resource, but the situation is not benefiting from the water source, which makes the price of the water is more than several times of the oil. In Gulf War, the water resource becomes a crucial element of the result of the war as a kind of special weapon. So some relatives predict that water resource will become the main reason of the war in the future. With development of the modern agriculture, industry, and technology, there is rapidly increasing trend of the requirement of the water resource. According to the Human Development Report of the United Nations Development Program, in some developed countries, The increasing population of the cities and the industry production is more than ability of the water supply, which is called urban water crisis. For example, the Mexico City of the Mexico, the Santiago of the Chile, and the Delhi of the India ever happened urban water crisis, which force these countries have to take effective actions to solve this problem, like water serving, the limitation of the large-scale industry water use, construct the water transfer project. Recently, there are many countries happened water crisis because of the climate of the high temperature and the drought. Korea, Japan, Israel, and Singapore happened the situation of the water resource limit supply. Even the industry of some countries has to close for serving the water resource usage. The next part is water crisis of the top 3 countries. There are many countries facing the water crisis according to the Human Development Report of the United Nations Development Programme. I just pick up the top 3 water resource shortage countries, which is China, India, and the US. The topic 1 is China. China improves the sort of the crops and increases the price of the fresh water resource to solve the water crisis. Some relative data show that the per capita water consumption increased more than 5 times more than before during the urbanization process. At the same time, there is an increasing trend of the water resource requirement of the agriculture irrigation, which decrease the flow capacity and greatly consume the amount of the groundwater resource. The adjustment of the water resource usage becomes the main mission of the Chinese government. The relative experts believe there is not enough to rely on the construction on the water conservation project. The government should update the sort of the crops and improve the price of the fresh water source, and improve the water usage efficiency. The second water crisis country is India. That contract water conservation infrastructure and the use rainwater to irrigation. Although at the monsoon season in the June to September, the reservoir of the Indian will lack enough water resource. On the other hand, widespread flood destroys the farmland and the irrigation system, which makes the farmers pump out the groundwater to solve the shortage of the water resource supply. India needs a better water infrastructure construction and a perfect water management system, which benefit to use the rainwater and solve the water crisis in the future. A few of people realized the US became the third water resource shortage country of the world. In fact, the majority of the farmers facing with the increasing number of the requirement of the freshwater resource expect the west of the US, which also caused conflict between the adjacent states. According to the government of the US, estimate that the drought makes the government has to spend $6 billion to $7 billion for farm aid. If the government decreases the farm aid, there will cause a deep influence on living of the ranchers and farmers in the Midwest to Southwest of the US. The next part is the countermeasure of the water crisis. There is a common sense of the reasonable water source usage and water serving of the world. According to the Human Development Report of the United Nations Development Programme, the governments of the development countries like America, France, Japan, Canada, and Germany make the reasonable water resource policy as a very important economic policy, which can promote it rationally exploit the water resource and reasonable water resource management of the entire society. In some developing countries, especially some water source shortage countries like Mexico, India, Chile, Egypt, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Iraq, Bangladesh, take some measures to build water serving facility. For example, reasoning of the water resource allocation and making different standards of each kind of the profession, which is decrease the water resource shortage of the government pressure. As a water serving aspect, the governments of the countries publish the relative policy and take effective measures to decrease the blinding water resource usage and allocation. For example, Japan has advanced industry and due to the huge amount of water resource requirement, which makes the government put a lot of funding into water serving area and get obvious result. For example, the industry water recycling project makes the rate of the Japanese water recycling gets the 73.1% and decreased more than 30% industry water use. The U.S. had advanced agriculture and industry, and Tennessee River shows the benefit of the comprehensive development of the water resource. On the other hand, America improves the traditional agriculture irrigation method, which is a typical example of the agriculture hydrotechnics advance and improves the usage efficiency of the water resource. To get the better way to water resource management, the countries of the worldwide publish the relative law for supporting the water resource protection, like France, Germany, Japan, Singapore, Thailand, America, and Canada. Those countries not only make the relative economic policy of the water resource, and also they take the effective and scientific measures to manage the water source, which produce a positive impact on the water resource protection. For example, the U.S. Congress passed the Tennessee Valley Authority Act, which makes the usage of the water resource more detailed, as the water resource management of the Canada, which makes a relative law to protect the water resource. Also, the government of the Canada established the authoritative institution to manage water resource. So let's move to next part. My viewpoint of the water crisis. Actually, I didn't have the clear conscience about the water resource prediction and the water crisis until I went to my university and started my relative major course that is about these issues. I gradually had some viewpoints of the water resource after I started my major course study. First, I think the public should realize the current situation of the water crisis and improve the water resource protection conscious. There is traditional Chinese saying, when drinking water, think of its source, to remember where one's happiness comes from. Sometimes This thing always means if somebody ever helped you, you should remember him and retain him. From the water resource issue, I think the water source is a wealth of the nature, and we should enjoy this gift and try our best to protect it. This matters not only for the nature environment, but also for ourselves and our generations. So the education is very important. As a part of the society, we have responsibility to tell people around you about the importance of the water source and how serious of water crisis. On the second point, we should have the positive attitude for the water saving activity and participate in the water recycling project. In our daily life, the water requirement is more than our imagination. If everybody joins the water recycling project, it can contribute to the water resource saving and decrease the living cost of ourselves. So I think those measures is more reality for our daily life. Conclusion. Although currently the majority of the countries has realized that the water crisis is an emergency issue, it still needs more and more countries join the group of the water resource protection. Also, the seriousness of the current water resource situation needs more people to concentrate it. The water resource is the main thing in the future. For ourselves, for our generations. Here is my reference. Thanks for your watching.